Hello, everyone. This is Kyle Welch with RCR Wireless News. I want to thank everyone for attending today's Analyst Angle webinar, LTE Unlicensed and Wi-Fi, Moving Beyond Coexistence. Our presenter today is Monica Polini, founder and president of Sensafili Consulting. At this time, I'd like to pass the presentation over to Monica.
Kyle, well, thank you very much for the introduction, and it's a pleasure to talk about LTE Unlicensed and Wi-Fi. I'm just finishing writing a report which will be available next week. And when I started planning for this months ago, I was moved, I have to confess, mostly by my personal interest in trying to see and understand what was going on. And over the last few months, the level of interest in LTE Unlicensed has grown tremendously. So it has been very exciting to work on this because everybody was eager to have their voice heard, and we have a very good list of sponsors that are actually in the report featured with in-depth interviews, and that really makes the report so much more interesting than if I just were to write everything on my own. And but it's really it's really cool at this point in time is that it's really the right moment to talk about this because of all the standardization efforts going on, all the that are in parallel with the interest in the solution, and so it's crucial right now to have a discussion because this is the time with the standardization process where all the key features of LTE license are being decided, and these are going to be crucial to the success of the technology in this case. In most cases, this is not the standardization process is something that it's used to support a technology, but here it's really more than that because the way that the standardization process will be completed will determine to a large extent whether LTE license is going to be accepted or not in the ecosystem, the wireless ecosystem, and I mean both Wi-Fi and LTE. So it's very timely, I think, as a topic, and the report will be published next week. And what I'm going to do today is to give you a preview of what is in the report, and look forward to get your questions at the end. And I will give you a preview of the interviews. Now, before I get into the sort of the more detailed stuff, I just wanted to sort of step back a bit and ask the question of why are we talking about LTE unlicensed? LTE is working very well in license bands. Why do we need to go to unlicensed? And why do we need to go to unlicensed where there is already Wi-Fi there, and Wi-Fi is doing a great job? And it actually took me a while to find an answer to that. But I think that one important thing is to move a little bit, away from just mobile data. And if you look at all the IP traffic, what you see is that there is a huge increase in the percentage of IP traffic, I mean wireline and wireless, that goes over wireless. It's in 2013, according to Cisco, was 59%, and it's expected to be 75 by 2018. This is quite surprising, or I found it to be incredibly surprising when I saw these numbers, and because this wireless traffic, most of this wireless traffic is over Wi-Fi, and most of it is over 100 megahertz in the 2.4 gigahertz band. So you can see that the unlicensed spectrum that initially was allocated on a as a sort of niche application, and in fact the 2.4 gigahertz band was allocated in 1947 when obviously there was no Wi-Fi at the time. So it was only for other devices, nobody was thinking about mobile broadband at that point. But it has been an incredible success. And so if you think about it from the point of view of efficiency, of spectral efficiency has been it's amazing, and this is despite the fact that oftentimes we think about unlicensed spectrum as being less valuable, more difficult to control, and uh, prone to interference, which is all true. But at the same time, it's also a situation where this is spectrum that it's not just a giveaway, a sideline. This is actually crucial to our communication. So it's not really surprising to see that operators are also interested in this, because you can see how much traffic you can pack in those bands. And so it's really when you look at it from this point, you can understand why mobile operators are interested and why they're interested in using not just this band with Wi-Fi, but with the technology like LTE and license that gives them a better performance in terms of spectral efficiency. Mobile operators initially were very skeptical about, very wary about using unlicensed spectrum because they're used to licensed spectrum. But with Wi-Fi offload, they had to deal with it, and it was, in most cases, it was just something that they were forced to deal with. It was not necessarily a choice. They had to do it because they needed capacity, and that was available. And LTE and license makes them even more comfortable in using this band. But what that means is that this is an additional dimension that mobile operators have to face in terms of coexisting and integrating their networks, having their networks to coexist and integrate with across different technologies. So they're going to use multiple technologies, Wi-Fi, LTE, and other cellular technologies, and they have to integrate them in their networks. And at the same time, because of this densification, and the need to have additional capacity, they need multiple networks have to coexist in the same place, and that makes everything more complicated. And more interesting at the same time. So here we go. So this is an overview of the presentation, what I'm going to be covering. And I think that the first thing to keep in mind is that LTE and license is a complement to Wi-Fi. It's not a substitute. So, and sometimes there is a little bit of a defensive attitude in terms of, this is the enemy. And in reality, what it is we have this unlicensed spectrum. It's a huge asset. What is the most efficient way to use it? And from a mobile operator point of view, LTE license delivers a lot of advantages. And not only is it performance, but it's also native integration with the rest of the mobile network. But at the same time, everybody will continue to use Wi-Fi. Mobile operators actually, as you can see in the previous slide, the cellular use is actually really tiny compared to the overall use. So this is not going to change by the introduction of LTE and license. So it might change a bit, but not dramatically. There's still residential users, enterprise users that use Wi-Fi, and mobile operators too. Many mobile operators are already committed to Wi-Fi. So we need to, the issue is of the coexistence of Wi-Fi and LTE is going to remain, and it's going to be absolutely central to the success of LTE, because LTE comes in an environment where Wi-Fi is dominant, like as legacy status, mature technology, widely used. LTE has to adapt to what's already there. So the coexistence is crucial. The reason why the title of the report is Beyond Coexistence is because coexistence is so important that it's clearly as step one. It's a prerequisite. The question is that what is coexistence, and how can we make sure that the coexistence is fair? So this is the beyond part in the title. What is emerging in what I found out as I was doing the research for the report is that coexistence is feasible, but it relies on industry collaboration and consensus among all the ecosystem players. And here I mean both cellular and Wi-Fi. And it's crucial to have, as I said before, a discussion now because the standardization process is ongoing. It's a highly sensitive topic because Wi-Fi, it's a technology that people love intensely, and they use a lot, and so everybody is very protective about this. And so it's understandably so. So first of all, some terminology to get started. There is a lot of confusion on this side. Now, what I did in the report, and it follows the general use, although oftentimes there is some confusion in this. I talk about LTE unlicensed as the version of LTE that is deployed in the 5 gigahertz band and uses licensed LTE channel as a primary channel for signaling. And it is designed to coexist alongside Wi-Fi, but there are two versions. The first one that sometimes is called pre-standards, but it actually is standard-based, but it's standard-based on release 10 and 12. 10, 11, 12, sorry. And this is integrated with licensed LTE, but it uses the supplement and downlink, and the uplink is not necessary. And it's a less invasive change in LTE technology, so it's easier to implement. It can be implemented more readily, and so this is sort of the first version to be commercialized. Now, because however does not support LBT, listed before talk mechanisms, it can only be used in countries like China, Korea, India, and US. And so the market is more limited, and it really addresses the short-term need of operators to increase capacity. But in the long term, even in these markets where LTE-U can be used, we expect them to eventually move to LAA LTE, which is the other type, because this is a technology that has a global reach. Everybody, pretty much every country can use it, and it's based on release 13, so it's upcoming. And in this case, the best way to think about it probably is to think about it as a special case of carrier aggregation. So it's the same technology as LTE, but the channels are, one channel is licensed, one channel is unlicensed, and the licensed channels carries all the signaling. Now, with LBT, listen before talk implementation, LAA can be used in pretty much all the countries. But it requires bigger changes to LTE, and hence it's going to take longer time. But in the long term, this is the version of LTE unlicensed that we expect to become dominant. Okay, so what do they care about LTE license? Again, I talked generally before about the availability of spectrum, but if you think about specifically about the 5 gigahertz band, it's really there's a lot of value there. And the 2.4 is only 100 megahertz. In the 5 gigahertz, it's 300 and plus. Megahertz, so it's a good target. It's in many places is still underused. So there is still a good opportunity. Obviously, in the long term, there is a question whether at some point this will become congested too. Now, there is also beyond LTE and licensed in the 5 gigahertz band, there are also some other opportunities here to exploit unlicensed spectrum and LTE. So also, so LTE unlicensed could also be deployed in a standalone mode in which doesn't require a licensed channel. Cable operators and wireless ISPs might be interested in that, but it has not attracted much attention, much interest. But it's a possibility. Carrier Wi-Fi and LTE and Wi-Fi aggregations are other ways to go about using unlicensed spectrum, and there is a lot of work going on that side. I will get back on this later. And then there is the possibility to use 3.5 gigahertz for LTE in many countries. This is a licensed band, but it's also a band that it's largely unused, and it works very well for small cell deployments, so for the densification efforts, because it doesn't interfere with macro layer, and and it's available. So and it's available and licensed. So for an operator, that's an interesting possibility too. So there is a lot of interest in that area. And then also LTE can be used. LTE license can be used in other bands as well. Now this is the integration between licensed and unlicensed. As you can see here, there is the LTE license is the primary carrier that works for does the control plane for both licensed and unlicensed. It can use FDD or TDD. And then the LTE license is the secondary carrier, and it only does data plane. It can be only downlink, but it can also be uplink. The focus is on the downlink. That's where the primary value for the LTE license is, and it's TDD because the 5 gigahertz band uses TDD. And this is more for opportunistic use. So the LTE license, it's mostly used for mobility support, voice, the type of more sort of traditional bread and butter applications. And LTE unlicensed, it can be used whenever needed. So if an operator doesn't need the capacity that unlicensed brings, it can just shut off and not use it, the LTE unlicensed. And it's really something that it's in addition, and because it's unlicensed, the operator cannot strictly count on it in the same way that you can count on the licensed part. But that's still an advantage because you can add capacity in a very efficient way, cost efficient and performance efficient. Now here, there is I'm showing here how you can coexist with Wi-Fi. So here is how LTE and license work with the licensed and unlicensed. Here is how does it deal with the existing Wi-Fi networks. So you can imagine a situation where the operator has LTE licensed small cells, LTE unlicensed, and there is also a Wi-Fi network. The Wi-Fi network might be owned by the operator, by a second operator, or it might be an enterprise Wi-Fi network, residential Wi-Fi network. It could be anything. And LTE unlicensed has to deal with all of those. So, and in fact, Wi-Fi has to deal with it too. So every technology that uses the 5 gigahertz spectrum has to be able to receive interference and not create harmful interference to other networks. Now, from the Wi-Fi point of view, these mechanisms are built in, so fair coexistence within the Wi-Fi environment. It's built in. There are listen before talks mechanisms, and through the years, Wi-Fi has developed a way. It's a very successful way to deal with situations where there are multiple networks present. Wherever you have Wi-Fi, you typically it's very likely that you have multiple networks because it's an area where there is a lot of use, and so this is a very common situation in Wi-Fi networks. So from the Wi-Fi point of view, the addition of LTE in the mix doesn't create there's nothing new. That's what Wi-Fi has been doing all along. From the LTE point of view, however, it's a much more complex case because LTE is used to operate in a licensed band where it does whatever it wants. So it transmits continuously and doesn't need to deal with the fact that there is somebody else using the band as well. As LTE moves into the unlicensed band, it needs to pay attention to what else is going on in the channel, and vary the transmission pattern accordingly. But before that, well, in the process of doing that, the first step is to see whether there is a clear channel. And this is where really the attraction, I think, of LTE and license is, because LTE and license is it's a very very easy, high performance way to use LTE in the license band. And if there is a clear channel that there is in which no Wi-Fi or other technology operates, it's completely clear, then LTE-U can take over that channel and transmit continuously. So that's very efficient. And this is really the first step that you want to do. If you're an operator, you have LTE license in one location, you scan the band, and if there is one channel that is unused, go use that and transmit all the time. And that's the best case scenario. And this is a scenario that right now in many places is the scenario that operators face because the band is not entirely used. So that's good. The coexistence problems arise when there is no clear channel. So LTE has to share the channel with at least one Wi-Fi network or an LTE unlicensed network. So the coexistence is not just with Wi-Fi; it's also with other LTE unlicensed operators or networks. And what LTE-U does is uses an adaptive duty cycle, also known as CSAT, that basically forces LTE to transmit only part of the time. So LTE would be on for part of the time and off for some of the time. And the on and off periods depend on how the operator wants to manage it, what are the settings, what are the level of activities of Wi-Fi. So the ratio of this to this might change, and what that does, it allows both technologies to coexist. However, this is something that it's sort of decided from the LTE side. So many of the Wi-Fi players find this to be a little bit too aggressive. And again, it's not sufficient to meet the regulatory requirements of countries like Europe and Japan, where listen before talk has to be used. So if you are an operator, you go see, is there a clear channel? Yes or no. If there isn't any, you have to do sharing. And if you do sharing, you can do use adaptive duty cycle, which is LTE-U, or you can use LAA LTE, and you use listen before talk. So now let's look at so this is how LTE analysis work. But the question you might ask is, and that a lot of people ask is, well, you already have Wi-Fi. Why not keep using Wi-Fi instead of using LTE unlicensed? What are the advantages? And so here I list many of them, and I don't have the time to really go into the details of all of them, but I think that the really key ones are two. LTE unlicensed has a higher spectral efficiency, better device management, because it's really designed for this kind of scenarios where you have multiple mobile devices, edge, you have coverage requirements. So this is what LTE is designed for. When you move it to the unlicensed band, so if you look at LTE licensed versus Wi-Fi unlicensed, LTE license is better because it can do whatever it wants with the spectrum. Wi-Fi is not as good because it has to coexist. The fairness and the fairness has a price. You have to pay a price for fairness. So LTE has a potential of performing better, but as you get more and more fair in terms of coexisting, that advantages will tend to decrease. So there is a question, I think, here, and we don't know the answer yet because we don't know what the LTE unlicensed standardization results will be. At some point, you might have a situation where LTE it can be so nice that then it's no better than Wi-Fi. What the results are showing us right now is that yes, the fairness will take a hit, but it's not. There is still going to be a good performance advantage for LTE and license. But the details of this, we still don't know them because we don't know what the final version, the final specs for LTE for LAA LTE will be. But that is the main attractiveness of LTE is the improved performance, and the one that is just a little bit below is the fact that for an operator, LTE and license is basically LTE, so it's natively integrated in their own network. So it's a huge advantage for an operator. It's much easier to deal with LTE and licensed, and it gives them a better resource utilization, spatial efficiency. So that's all very good. That's the advantage over Wi-Fi. But what Wi-Fi has that LTE and license doesn't have is that it's all over the place. It's ubiquitous in the devices. So all the devices already have it. LTE and license will require new devices. And every time you need new devices, there is an issue because you need to have the vendors to agree to have to have Wi-Fi, LTE license in the devices. The vendors need to agree to implement LTE license in the devices, and they would only do so after the operators commit to deploy. The operators will not commit to deploy until they know that the vendors are committed. So there is always this initial circle, and then once you have the devices, it takes some time for the users to actually buy those devices. So it's a longer term process, and it's requires a lot of effort, and it requires scale. The other thing that Wi-Fi has going for it is that it has this very strong indoor presence already, and this presence can be used by the operator to basically start or to use it as a base for small cells deployments. So this is something that Wi-Fi, because of being such mature, established technology, everybody's using it, everybody knows about it. It has a huge advantage in terms of having a sort of a footprint that can be used for headnets. And this is especially true because there are a lot of efforts to get the aggregation between LTE and Wi-Fi to improve. And the LWA that I'm going to talk about later, it's one way, and it could be an alternative to LTE unlicensed. Now, there has been efforts ongoing for over 10 years in trying to get LTE and Wi-Fi, well, LTE, cellular and Wi-Fi to be integrated, but there is a huge, despite all the progress, there is a fundamental issue that we're dealing with. Wi-Fi is a technology that it's mostly driven by the device side. Cellular is mostly controlled by the network side. So there is always going to be some level of fighting back and forth. So they're two different technologies. And what LWA does is it tries to get the best out of the two, but there is still this kind of tension that needs to be resolved. Now, the standardization process here, I'm going to go through this quickly, but we need to keep in mind that the standardization process is going to be completed by March 16 with release 13. That's the expected date. Here, what I'm showing in the quote is that 3GPP is clearly committed to have a solution that respects Wi-Fi, and the way it defines fairness is that LAA should not have any more impact on Wi-Fi than any additional Wi-Fi network would have on the same carrier, and that's all. It's all good in the sense that if you have a network, you can go ahead and say test it. You put an additional Wi-Fi access point, you put an additional LTE and license cell, but it's still difficult in sort of when you're drawing the specifications to know what is that would accomplish that, and how do you measure, what kind of cases are you looking at. So it sounds good, but it's actually the details are actually how to actually do it. It's complicated. Um, and so the approach that this 3GPP has to standardization is the following here. The major commitments is that it's limited to the 5 gigahertz band. Our downlink is the first priority. There is a commitment to find a global solution, which means listen before talk, and so there is a lot of work going on. There seems to be a true desire to have good coexistence. And 3GPP is largely, well, not as large. 3GPP represent the LTE community. So on one hand, one worry is that the LTE community wants to get the maximum benefit for LTE and license, but that's really that would be unwise, and I think that everybody involved in the process realizes that if they try to be too greedy, then they're not going to be accepted. The solution is not going to be accepted by the overall wireless community, including Wi-Fi. And if you do that, then the risk of LTE and license being accepted becomes gets lower, and so it's really to nobody's advantage. So it's to everybody's advantage to find a solution that makes everybody happy, or reasonably happy at least. Now, the deployment scenarios that 3GPP as indicated, which are not too different from what specific vendors and operators have, and we'll see NTT Docomo next, is that the LTE license is going to be clearly a small cell type of topology. You can in principle use a LTE license at the macro level, but it's really not a good idea. It just wouldn't work in terms of the propagation characteristics of the band. So the small cell, the unlicensed small cell, can use carrier aggregation with a small cell or with a macro cell. And depending on the backhaul, depending whether it's indoor and outdoor. So there are different deployment scenarios, but they all assume that LTE license is going to be in a small cell type of topology. And I would add that in a lot of cases is going to be not only small cell but also indoor. Okay, so this is something somewhat similar. This is a deployment scenarios that NTT Docomo is considered. So there is a question of where you integrate in the RAN, but there's also a question of where you integrate I mean, if you have macro or small cells, but also where you integrate in the core. And so you can have different levels of integration. And so again, there are different possibilities here. Now, in terms of the interference, we mostly talk about Wi-Fi, but we have to keep in mind that there is potential interference also between LTE networks, LTE licensed networks that can belong to the same operator or different operators. So, so there are different sources of potential interference that need to be managed. Okay, so here there is some results from comparison, from a simulation, and I don't want to really focus too much on the specific results, and there are many different simulation trials that have been reported, and in the report I have a list of all of them, but I don't really, I looked at them, but I think it's important to go beyond the details. So here, for instance, you can see that as the traffic load increases, the advantage of LTE and license grows. And this is because then if you have low the lower traffic load, the overhead is less, and so Wi-Fi does relatively better. Now, the reason why I don't want to spend too much time on the specific numbers, on the specific spread here, is because that one really changes a lot depending on the assumptions. And okay, here there is another case where you can see that if you have two Wi-Fi operators, same, obviously everything is shared between the two LTE operators, same thing. But if you have LTE and Wi-Fi, the interesting thing is that the LTE performance, the LTE and license performance goes down, but the Wi-Fi performance goes up. And so there is this finding that others have found similar results, that that basically LTE is a better neighbor than Wi-Fi is to itself. And so that's an interesting way to look at it. So to see LTE and license not as some technology that comes in and makes things worse, but it could be not any different, and in fact even better than Wi-Fi. Now, obviously, here the comparison that needs to be done is if there is an additional Wi-Fi or additional LTE, because clearly every time you add more transmission in the band, you're going to increase contention, and then you might increase the overall throughput of the band, but at each technology, each channel, each access point or small cell will carry less traffic. Now, if we look at it from the user perspective and for the overall spectrum management, spectrum efficiency perspective, we should really look at the overall throughput for the whole band, because that's what as a user we get. So it might be a good way to go to have more use of more access points and more cells, because that leads to a greater spectral efficiency overall for the band, not at a single level. However, we really need to be careful in the way we look at we look at the different simulations. And here I have a whole list of different aspects that can change the results. So it's not really surprising that you see differences in the results. So what I try to do is to really stay clear to really look at what percentage increase, what percentage decrease, and all the details, and instead focus at the sort of the high level differences. And so here I tried to summarize them. So if you look at Wi-Fi versus LTE and license in a standalone mode, so you have only one or the other, what it looks like is that LTE, and this is the comparing different simulations and trials. What it looks like is that LTE has better spectral efficiency because the transmission is better at managing interference and providing coverage, and that LTE is more robust when you increase the traffic load and the number of users. So in a situation where you have a very highly packed network, LTE performance is even better. So this is not too surprising, but this is something that has been found across different trials. Now, when you get to Wi-Fi and LTE, the combined Wi-Fi and LTE capacity can be higher than Wi-Fi only, given the same amount of infrastructure. And the Wi-Fi performance might increase with LTE as neighbor. However, I think that the real open question is the impact of listen before talk on LTE unlicensed, and there has been some simulations with somewhat different results, and but we don't know, because it depends on really how that is implemented. Now, the addition, well, I should say, there is an increasingly high interest in LWA, and this is LTE and Wi-Fi aggregation. And this is also part of a standardization process within 3GPP. So 3GPP is looking at this as well as an either an alternative or a complement to LTE unlicensed. There's a lot of interest because what this does is to increase the integration of Wi-Fi and cellular in the RAN. So this is not like initiatives like Hotspot or Passpoint, Hotspot 2.0 or Passpoint, where the emphasis is to try to make a seamless transition between Wi-Fi and cellular to some extent from the user perspective. Here is to try to coordinate very closely Wi-Fi and cellular. So you might have the downlink on Wi-Fi and the uplink on cellular. And this is because Wi-Fi is good at the downlink and cellular is good at the uplink. So you basically combine the strength of the two technologies. Or you might have a cellular that does uplink and downlink. But also a possibility is to use Wi-Fi and LTE unlicensed and LTE licensed together, as is shown here. And so it might not be sort of an alternative solution. And I think that this is something that we will see how this is going, but there is a lot of excitement in the industry because different operators might have different preferences, but this is an interesting way. And the advantage clearly of LWA is that you can use the infrastructure that is already out there. So it's a shorter time to market. Now, let me conclude before I quickly go and talk about the interviews. I think that, I think we've shown why mobile operators care. However, the fact that they care, it's counterbalanced by the fact that the Wi-Fi users might feel threatened. They do feel threatened, in fact, by LTE and license. So there is a lot of, and that's where a lot of the debate is, because Wi-Fi users want to make sure that LTE does not come in and take an undue portion of the unlicensed spectrum, because unlicensed spectrum is free for everybody to use. And but the question is, how do you define fairness? And when you have only one technology like Wi-Fi, everybody is sort of by definition on an even field, because they all use the same mechanisms. With LTE, there is a different dimension where we need to look at how to coexist. And I think it's a very interesting case, because then it's going to be good overall for the industry to understand how to deal with situations like this in the future. And however, some consider 5G as a Wi-Fi spectrum, and really it's not, because not only for Wi-Fi, but and not only LTE unlicensed wants to also use that, but there are other uses as well of the technology. So it's really, broadly speaking, it's really a spectrum, a band that everybody can use. But even the players in the Wi-Fi area are positive that coexistence is possible. So it's not in the same way that multiple Wi-Fi networks can coexist. The LTE networks can also brought in and coexist, but there is a lot of industry collaboration that is needed, and that might also go beyond regulation. So the regulation that is in countries like in Western Europe and Japan is more restrictive than other countries, but it might still not be enough. So there is a question as how far you want to go. And the success of LTE license depends on the availability and cost to add LTE license to the mobile devices, accepted by the Wi-Fi ecosystem. And the reason for that is that you need to put LTE licensed equipment somewhere. And most of the time will be, or many, in a substantial percentage of cases, that will be indoors. You're not going to be able to put, as a mobile operator, you're not going to be able to put any infrastructure indoor unless the venue owners allow that. And if the venue owner has Wi-Fi already installed and they don't want to have undue interference caused by LTE unlicensed because they don't trust the technology, they don't want to see it, it's going to be very difficult for the mobile operator to deploy it. So the support from the Wi-Fi ecosystem is necessary from not just from a standardization regulation point of view, but from a practical point of view of the ability of mobile operators to go and find some place where they can actually put the equipment. So it's not, it goes well beyond regulation or standardization efforts, or the standardization efforts have to take into account this kind of issues that mobile operators face. And I think that this is why we see 3GPP being very sympathetic in terms of trying to accommodate the requirements of Wi-Fi players. And then the performance advantage of LTE compared to Wi-Fi when you add LBT, what is the price that LTE license has to pay, and how does that correspond to the cost? So is it cost effective to then deploy LTE unlicensed in this situation? And then the other thing is obviously how good how easy it is to integrate Wi-Fi and cellular as a possible alternative. So this is all for in terms of the sort of the general overview. But now let me go and talk a little bit about the preview of the interviews. The interviews are already been published, so you can see them, you can read them already, and I would encourage you to do so. But it will be included in the report when it comes out next week. I think that it's interesting because if you saw the list of sponsors, there is everybody's represented. There is Wi-Fi camp and the LTE camp. And I think that there is a consensus emerging that there is a need to work together, and that's something that is good for everybody involved. There is a lot of work, there's a lot of requirements, and so it's not going to be necessarily easy, but it's possible. So I'm going to quickly go through the interviews here. As I said, they are available, and you're going to be able to have the slides anyway. So that we have some time for questions. So Alcatel-Lucent is the first one, and they talk about their approach to integrate Wi-Fi and LTE in stage 1, and then LTE and LTE-U in stage 2. So it's a multi-step approach, and in trying to integrate and extract the best that these technologies offer. Interdigital, with Interdigital, we talked a lot about fairness, about the need to have Wi-Fi and LAA to work together. And there is a question, what is fairness? And in principle, we know what it is. In practice, it's going to be a lot of work. And here we discussed a lot into what is that work, the work that is needed, the requirements that need to be met. Qualcomm, here the focus was in the spectral efficiency that you get with LTE unlicensed, and as we talked before, this is really important in terms of making sure that we make the best use of unlicensed spectrum in general. So this is and this is good for the overall. I just wouldn't say the ecosystem for the entire community. So it's both for all the stakeholders. It's users, operators, enterprise, and so we want to make sure that whatever spectrum is available, it's used efficiently. And if that means that we get to the point where there is congestion, well, that makes a good reason to have to require more or to demand more unlicensed spectrum. And I think that the regulators are looking into that, and they're becoming increasingly sympathetic to the need and to the opportunity that this offers. With Ruckus Wireless, we talked about the role of the enterprise in accepting LTE unlicensed, and the importance of having LTE and Wi-Fi aggregated. And this is really a very important trade-off for operators, and they cannot just decide on their own. They have to take what the enterprise and venue owners included, think. And Ruckus have been working with the enterprise for a long time, so this is an interesting topic that we covered there. The Wi-Fi Alliance, it's another interesting interview, I would say they were quite interesting in very different ways, which is why the overall report, I think it's quite useful to get a sense of where LTE license is going. Now, the Wi-Fi Alliance has something that has a lot of experience in dealing with coexistence of different networks with each other, and so that is quite important, and they can bring that experience into coexisting this time with a different technology. And they understand that there is a lot of work ahead because they've done that work before with Wi-Fi. Although Wi-Fi does incorporate from the beginning, it incorporated a good coexistence mechanisms with other Wi-Fi networks. There has been a lot of refinement and a lot of work that had to be done to get to the point in which we are today, where coexistence among Wi-Fi networks works very well. And finally, Accelera, we talked about the need to manage Wi-Fi and LTE unlicensed traffic, because once you have the two interfaces, you still need to decide which traffic goes where. How do you deal with this? And so this is really important in terms of using the RAN resources that you have in an efficient way. So step one, deploy your network, but step two is run it in a way that delivers the efficiencies that you're looking for. And finally, we talked to Tele2 as an operator that is looking at Wi-Fi today, LTE and license in the longer term. And and here, this is this is all from my end. Again, the report is going to be available May 18th, and you can download it from the RCR Wireless website. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks, Monica. This is Kyle again. We have time for just about 2 or 3 questions, so we'll just jump right in. First one being asked, will Enterprise allow LTE to be installed at venues?
Yeah, as I said, this is really a crucial question that doesn't get discussed, I think, as much as it really should. They will, if they think that LTE unlicensed does not have a negative impact on their own infrastructure. That doesn't take control or an undue role. The spectrum is a license, so everybody can do whatever they want with the spectrum. But real estate is controlled by the owners of the area. So if a stadium has already a Wi-Fi network, they want to protect the performance on that. So they're not going to allow a mobile operator to come in and put LTE unlicensed unless they think that there is a good coexistence mechanism. So that's why it's very important for the mobile operators and the vendors selling LTE equipment to make sure that they offer a solution that the venues will accept.
All right, great, thanks. Next question we have, what is the relationship between LTE and LWA? I'm sorry, you should be all set now, Monica.
So okay. LWA does not require LTE unlicensed. So you can have LWA, so you can integrate Wi-Fi and any LTE licensed channel together. And that will give you an improvement in terms of using the Wi-Fi and LTE together, because you do the uplink on cellular and downlink largely on Wi-Fi. So there is an advantage there. You can extend to incorporate also LTE unlicensed in the mix, but you don't have to. So an operator can look at LWA as an additional a way to get started with Wi-Fi integration today and then add LTE and license when it becomes available. So it's part of a two-step process. Or it could say, well, since we have LWA, we can just integrate with Wi-Fi. Maybe we don't need LTE unlicensed. And I think it's still an open question because both technologies are being developed at the same time. So depending on how it works, how well it works, operators will pick one or the other.
All right, great. Next question we have is, what would be the expected impact on quality of service for LTE and especially voice over LTE under the coexistence scenarios you mentioned earlier?
Okay, voice over LTE. The expectation that I have is that services like voice will tend to stay over licensed, so they're not going to be particularly impacted. Voice accounts for something in the order of 10% of traffic. So when you get to a situation where you need to manage traffic in terms of quantity, in terms of capacity, it's relatively easy to keep the voice traffic unlicensed, and where you have better mobility support, there are some advantages there, and then just do data or other types, or for instance even video, which is not as crucial in terms of QoS on unlicensed. So in that sense, there shouldn't be really much of an impact.
All right, Monica, I think we have time for just about one question. And everyone in the audience, if we didn't get to your question, Monica will be receiving a copy of all these questions. So sorry we didn't get to it, but the last question we have is it cost effective to deploy LTE?
Well, okay, so this is an interesting question, and Wi-Fi has been traditionally cheaper than LTE. So when you have an LTE equipment, we don't know what the cost is yet, but you could imagine that it's still LTE. So there is really the cost might be a little bit higher. So that the equipment costs in any deployment account for a very small percentage of the capex and operation together. So if you look at the TCO, the equipment cost doesn't have a huge impact, but nevertheless it's there. And so the question is, you'd expect that it would be slightly more expensive to deploy LTE and license than Wi-Fi. On the other hand, because the integration is easier, you can save from the network management point of view. But the key issue is to see what is the improvement in performance. So if you have if the performance advantage of LTE is high, then even if there is a little bit of a cost increase, then it's easily absorbable. It can be absorbed. Otherwise, if let's say that LTE license doesn't provide any performance advantage over Wi-Fi, and Wi-Fi is cheaper, then the operators are more likely to use Wi-Fi. If it's an even point of view, however, they might still go for LTE license because it's easier to integrate. So I think that the question, the answer depends largely to how much of a cost performance there is. Performance advantage there is, and how much of a cost difference there is. And we don't know either, so it's going to be seen.
All right, thanks. That's about all the time we have today. I want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar, LTE Unlicensed and Wi-Fi, Moving Beyond Coexistence. Again, our presenter today was Monica Paolini, founder and president of Senzafili Consulting. Thank you, Monica.
Thank you, Kyle, very much.